I am Nikhil Kumar. I am Professor and Head, University Department of English, Veer Kunwar Singh University, Ara, in the province of Bihar in India. Today, I wish to speak on Sri Aurobindo's revelation of Mantra. Mantra is the poetic expression of the deepest spiritual reality. Sri Aurobindo has discovered four planes of spiritual consciousness on the plane of mind itself. To speak on these four planes of consciousness, I want to define spiritual consciousness first as the plane of mental consciousness where there is the realization of the existence of the one divine. Sri Aurobindo terms these four planes of spiritual consciousness as high mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, and overmind consciousness. Overmind consciousness is the summit of mental consciousness. Beyond it, there exists consciousness which works on the principle of one. Sri Aurobindo calls it supramental consciousness. This supramental consciousness exists beyond the plane of creation itself. It is essentially the transcendent divine consciousness. Sri Aurobindo further says that poetry which is written from some higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness and overmind consciousness is mantra. Therefore, mantra comes to be the truth of higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness and overmind consciousness. But since intuitive mind consciousness and overmind consciousness have their origin in the supramental consciousness, the supramental consciousness also comes to be the plane of mantra. We may call it the transcendent mantra. Transcendent beyond, it is the consciousness, as I have told earlier, which operates on the principle of one. We can also call it the integral consciousness, whereas mental consciousness operates on the principle of division or separation. Sri Aurobindo has very categorically stated that poetry which is written from some higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness and overmind consciousness is mantra. Since he lays emphasis on the higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness, it is obvious that the very character of the higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness is different from the lower plane of the intuitive mind consciousness. This character is different for the reason that the higher half of the intuitive mind consciousness has been transformed by the supramental substance. Since overmind consciousness is the higher plane of consciousness existing above the plane of the intuitive mind consciousness itself, the overmind consciousness is also supramentally transformed. So, therefore, we firstly come to the conclusion that mantra is a thing of the supramental consciousness itself. So, in order to understand mantra in detail, we have to know what the intuitive mind consciousness is. Firstly, intuitive mind consciousness, as Sri Aurobindo says, firstly, is the immediate translation of the supramental consciousness into mental terms. He has also stated, to make it all the more clear, that the intuitive mind consciousness is a ray of the transcendent supramental consciousness. So, because it is a ray, it is essentially the supramental consciousness. The difference between the intuitive mind consciousness and the supramental consciousness is exactly the same which we find between the sun itself and its ray. Ray is the narrowing of the sun itself. So, the intuitive mind consciousness is a narrowing or a narrowed state of the supramental consciousness. It is the narrowed. It is narrowed because it has consented to operate or exist or dwell within the realm of mind, the mind which operates on the principle of division. The basic difference between the intuitive mind consciousness, especially the higher half of the intuitive mind consciousness, and the other planes of the lower planes of the spiritual mind consciousness, the intellectual mind consciousness, and the other planes of mental consciousness existing below the intellectual mind consciousness. These planes, in fact, are subject to the principle of division working in the mind. But the intuitive mind consciousness, especially the higher half of the intuitive mind consciousness, which has been transformed by the supramental substance, it is not subject to the principle of division which is working within the mind. Though it works within the mind, it works within the limitation, works within the domain of the principle of division or separation, it is not subject to the principle of division. So this is the thing, because the higher half of the intuitive mind consciousness has been supramentally transformed. Therefore, mantra comes to be essentially a matter of supramental consciousness. Further, the Vedic rishis and Sri Aurobindo also have stated that mantra is the revealed poetry, it is the inspired poetry. So, in this talk, I would like to concentrate on mantra as the revealed poetry. So, let us try to understand what is the revealed poetry, or what is mantra as the revealed poetry. The truth, as I told you earlier, which exists on the higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness and the overmind consciousness, this truth itself is mantra. This truth itself is poetry, which is mantra. Ordinarily, this truth is not visible to a man who has not evolved to these planes of consciousness, higher level of intuitive mind consciousness and overmind plane of intuitive mind consciousness. Actually, as a result of this, the light of the consciousness of the higher half of the intuitive mind consciousness, which is supramentally transformed, the truth which is hidden or not visible to an evolving man, it comes into the vision. Ordinarily, the truth which a man discovers or acquires is the result of his action of trial and error. He is compelled to work on the principle of trial and error because he is subject to the principle of division which is working in mind. So, it is not necessary that whatever he finds to be correct is really correct. This is evident from the fact that even in the realm of science, so many truths were earlier found to be correct or found to be truth. Later on, it was found to be incorrect or no truth at all. Say, for example, in the classical physics, time and space were considered to be the two incompatible realities. Science, let us note, that is the manifestation of the intellectual mind, and intellectual mind is under the gravitational pull of the separativity of consciousness, or we can say that it is under the gravitational pull of the principle of division or separation. Later on, in 20th century, we have the most celebrated scientist, Albert Einstein. He discovers a plane of existence in which space and time exist as one transcendent integral whole. He discovers four-dimensional plane of existence, and this one integral existence of space and time is the four-dimensional plane of existence. It is called space-time continuum or time-space continuum. That means space and time are not two incompatible realities. So this proves that so long as man is subject to the principle of division, or human mind or mind itself is subject to the principle of division, he is not able to discover truth in true sense. Unless the mind evolves further on the higher planes of consciousness, when he goes near the plane of spiritual consciousness and further rises towards the plane of mantric consciousness, he comes nearer the truth. So on the plane of intuitive mind consciousness, especially higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness, it is not the trial and error principle to which man is subject. Actually, the very intuitive mind consciousness, which is the ray of the transcendent supramental consciousness, that very ray makes the truth visible to man which was not visible to him, for the reason that man was not earlier living in the domain of the higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness. Intuitive mind consciousness, higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness, is basically the supramental consciousness. It exists beyond the plane of creation. As the sun is above us, its light comes down and makes everything visible. Similarly, this supramental consciousness on the higher plane of intuitive mind consciousness makes the truth visible to us. And that very truth comes to be mantra. So, mantra is called to be the revealed poetry. That's all for this session. Further, we shall take up this discussion, this mantra as inspired poetry. Thank you very much.